Ryan moved into the apartment when he was 25. He just started a new job in the city entry-level position at a logistics company, the kind of job that requires a lot of hours for not a lot of pay, but that you take anyway because it's a foot in the door. He needed to be close to the office, and he needed to be within a budget that a first job salary allowed, which meant his options were limited. The apartment on Carver Street was the best of a small number of options. Third floor, one bedroom, a building with maybe 30 units total. Older building, 1960s construction, he thought, the kind of place that had the bones of something that used to be nicer and hadn't kept up with that original ambition. But it was clean, the heat worked, the neighborhood was walkable. He signed a 12-month lease and moved in on a Saturday in March. He said the first few weeks were fine. New job exhaustion, the kind of tired that makes you fall asleep fast and sleep hard, meant he wasn't paying much attention to his surroundings beyond what he needed to function. He unpacked gradually, learned his commute, figured out which grocery store was closest. Normal new apartment life. The first thing he noticed, the thing that in retrospect was the beginning of everything, happened about 3 weeks in. He came home from work on a Thursday evening, a little after 7. He unlocked his front door, went inside, put his bag down, went to the kitchen to start dinner. Routine. He'd done the same thing every weeknight since he moved in. He was in the kitchen when he had the distinct feeling that something in the apartment was different. He said he stood in the kitchen and looked around and couldn't identify anything specific. Everything looked the same. His things were where he'd left them. Nothing was out of place in any obvious way. But the feeling was strong and specific, not a vague unease, but the clear and definite sense of a difference he couldn't name. He walked through the apartment slowly. Living room, fine. Bathroom, fine. Bedroom. In the bedroom, he stopped. His closet door was open. He said this is going to sound like nothing. He said he knows how it sounds. A closet door open in your own apartment, of course there's a normal explanation. You left it open. You forgot. It drifted on its own because old buildings have uneven floors and doors don't always latch properly. He said all of that went through his head immediately. But he knew, with the specific certainty that you have about your own habits, that he had not left that door open. He was particular about it. He'd had a roommate in his previous apartment who left every door open, and it had driven Ryan a little crazy, so he'd become deliberate about closing doors behind himself. He closed the closet every morning when he got dressed. He was certain of it. He looked in the closet. His clothes, his shoes, his boxes of things he hadn't unpacked yet. Everything present, everything undisturbed. He looked under the bed, nothing. He checked the bathroom again, pulled the shower curtain. Nothing. He closed the closet door and made dinner and told himself he'd left it open. He didn't believe it, but he told himself. It happened again 4 days later. Same thing, came home, closet door open, everything inside undisturbed, no other signs of anything wrong. He checked his front door lock carefully that time, no signs of tampering, the deadbolt was smooth and solid. He checked his windows, all locked from the inside. He mentioned it to a coworker the next day, framing it casually, the way you float a strange thing to see how someone else receives it. The coworker said old buildings settle and shift, doors that don't latch perfectly will drift open on their own. Ryan said the door latched fine. He demonstrated it to himself that evening, pulling it fully closed and then walking away and coming back an hour later to find it still shut. The latch held. The door didn't drift. He bought a small wireless camera, one of those inexpensive indoor security cameras about the size of a hockey puck that connected to an app on his phone. He set it up on his dresser facing the closet door, angled to capture that corner of the room. He felt a little absurd doing it, but he did it. For the next 6 days, the closet door was closed every evening when he came home. He reviewed the camera footage each night, 8 hours of empty bedroom, door closed, nothing moving. He started to feel foolish. He considered returning the camera. On the 7th day, he came home, and the closet door was open. He sat on the edge of his bed and opened the app and pulled up that day's footage and went through it. His bedroom while he slept undisturbed. The morning, him getting dressed, leaving, closing the closet door behind him. He watched himself do it on the footage, clear as anything, 7:43 a.m., pulling the closet door shut and walking out of the frame. He fast-forwarded through the empty apartment hours. At 4:17 p.m., the footage showed the closet door opening. Slowly, not swinging, opening the way a door opens when someone pulls it from the inside. The closet was empty. He could see that on the footage. The door opened and there was nothing behind it. No person, no animal, nothing fell out, nothing moved. The door opened to about 60 degrees and stopped. And stayed open. For the remaining 3 hours until Ryan came home, the door stayed open at 60 degrees. Nothing else happened. Nobody moved through the frame. The apartment was empty and still, and the closet door was open. Ryan sat on the edge of his bed and watched the footage 3 times. Then he picked up his phone and called his building manager. The building manager was a man named Phil. Ryan described him as somewhere in his 60s, a guy who'd been managing the building for a long time and had the manner of someone who had heard every possible tenant complaint and was mildly tired of all of them. Ryan explained about the closet door. He said he had camera footage showing it opening on its own. He said he wanted someone to check the apartment, check the closet, check whether there was any structural explanation for what he was seeing. Phil came up that evening. He looked at the closet. He looked at the door, the hinges, the latch. He opened and closed it several times. He said the hinges looked fine to him, the latch was working. He asked Ryan if anyone else had a key to the apartment. Ryan said no, just himself and the building's master key which Phil held. Phil said he'd check the master key log to make sure no one had been in for maintenance without notifying Ryan. He left. He called back the next day and said no one had accessed the apartment. Ryan said okay, thank you, and hung up. He looked at the camera on his dresser. He thought about the footage, a door opening from the inside of an empty closet. He left the camera running. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened with the closet. The door stayed shut every day when he came home. He reviewed the footage each evening, empty room, closed door, nothing moving. He started wondering if it had been a one-time anomaly. Some vibration in the building, some shift in the floor, some combination of factors that had occurred once and wouldn't again. The camera had served its purpose. He knew what he'd seen. Now it was done. Then the camera started turning off. Not malfunctioning, he was clear about the distinction in his notes and in his message to me. The camera was working. The app showed it as connected and active, but the footage had gaps in it. Periods of 20 or 30 minutes, sometimes longer during the overnight hours where the footage was simply absent. The timestamp would jump to 14 to 2:47 a.m., nothing in between. The camera hadn't lost power. The connection hadn't dropped. The footage was just gone. He contacted the camera manufacturer's customer support. They said the camera had no gaps in its activity log. From the device's perspective, it had been recording continuously. They couldn't explain absent footage from a continuously recording device. They offered to replace the unit. He took the replacement. Same thing happened within a week. He bought a second camera from a different manufacturer and set it up alongside the first. The gaps happened on both cameras simultaneously. Both cameras showing continuous recording. Both cameras with missing footage during the same overnight windows. He wrote in his notes. Ryan shared his actual notes with me in his message. He wrote, "Something is removing the footage, not interrupting the cameras. Something is taking what was recorded." He said he didn't know what that meant technically. He still doesn't. He just knew that was what the evidence showed, and he wrote it down. By this point, Ryan said he was sleeping badly. Not because of sounds or visible things. Nothing else had happened beyond the closet door and the camera footage gaps. But the knowledge that something was happening in his apartment in the early hours of the morning, something that left a gap in the record, was enough. He lay awake some nights just listening, the way you lie awake when you can't shake the feeling that the silence is wrong. It was during one of those awake periods, 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, lying in the dark, not looking at anything, that he heard the closet door. The specific soft sound of it opening. He knew the sound by then. The slight resistance of the latch giving way, the quiet movement of the door on its hinges. He lay completely still. He did not look. He said that was a deliberate choice, and he's thought about it many times since, and he still believes it was the right one. He didn't look because the camera was running, or was supposed to be running, and he told himself that if he looked and saw something his brain might not survive that intact, but the camera would have a record regardless. He told himself to lie still and let it record and look at the footage in the morning in the light with a cup of coffee in his hand like a sane person. He lay still. He heard the door open. He heard nothing else for a long time, no footsteps, no breathing, no sound of any kind beyond that initial opening. He lay still for what his phone later told him was 47 minutes, eyes open in the dark, not looking at the closet, before he finally fell asleep. In the morning, he looked at the camera footage. The gap was there. The footage went from 2:58 a.m. to 3:51 a.m. with nothing in between. The period of time when he had heard the door open and the 47 minutes after it was completely absent from the record. He looked at the closet. The door was open, exactly 60 degrees, the same as before. Ryan said that was the morning he started looking for a new apartment. He found one within 3 weeks and broke his lease, absorbing the financial penalty without negotiating. He said it was worth every dollar. He moved out on a Saturday in August and said goodbye to the building and to Phil and did not look back. He said for a while after moving out he mostly felt relief. New apartment, new start, nothing opening in the night. He slept better within a week. He didn't talk about the Carver Street apartment much because he didn't know how to talk about it in a way that didn't sound like he was describing a haunting, and he felt uncomfortable with that word. He put it away and moved on. He said it was about 6 months after he moved out that he found the post. He'd been on a local community forum, one of those neighborhood-specific online groups where people talk about restaurant recommendations and lost cats and local news. He was on it for his new neighborhood, but out of some idle impulse, he searched the name of his old street, Carver Street. There were a few posts, nothing interesting mostly. Then he found one from about 8 months before he'd moved into the apartment, so roughly a year before he found the post. It was from a woman who said she had lived in the building on Carver Street and was asking if anyone else had experienced what she'd experienced there. She described it in general terms, things feeling off, the sense of being watched, small things that were wrong in ways she couldn't explain. She asked if anyone knew the history of the building. There were 3 replies. 2 of them were dismissive, people who said old buildings had quirks. Don't let your imagination run away with you. The 3rd reply was from a username Ryan couldn't trace to a real identity. It said only this, that the building on Carver Street had been built on the site of a structure that had been demolished in 1959. That the previous structure had been used for purposes the reply described only as not residential. That during the demolition, workers had found things in the basement that had not been in any building record. That the construction company had filled and sealed the basement of the original structure rather than removing it, and poured the foundation of the new building over it. The reply ended with one sentence. It said, whatever was stored in that basement did not leave when the building changed. Ryan said that was the last post in the thread. The original poster never replied again. The thread went cold. He said he spent a long time thinking about that reply. He doesn't know if it's true, It's an anonymous post on a community forum. It could be someone's idea of a joke or a creative writing exercise. He can't verify it. He's tried to find records of whatever stood on that site before 1959 and hasn't been able to find anything useful. But he thinks about the footage gaps. Both cameras, different manufacturers, showing continuous recording, with the same windows of time simply absent from the record. He thinks about the closet door opening from the inside of an empty closet. He thinks about lying in the dark for 47 minutes listening to the silence after that door opened, eyes fixed on the ceiling, making himself not look. He said he's glad he didn't look. He said some part of him has always understood, without being able to fully explain why, that looking would have changed things. That whatever was in that apartment in those overnight hours was present in a way that the cameras couldn't capture, and he instinctively understood not to confirm with his own eyes. He said the camera footage gaps are the thing that follow him most, because they mean something was happening during those windows. Not absence, presence. Something happening that was also somehow removing itself from the record, as if it understood what a camera was and understood that it was being watched and knew exactly how to manage that. That's not an animal. That's not a building settling. That's not a draft moving a door on imperfectly balanced hinges. That's something that knows it's being observed and knows how to make sure you can't prove it. Ryan now lives on the other side of the city. He said he likes his current apartment. He said nothing has ever happened there, and he's grateful for that in a way he wasn't grateful for ordinary, uneventful living before Carver Street. He checks his cameras every morning now. He has 3 of them in his current apartment. He said it's just habit at this point. He makes coffee and he checks the overnight footage the way some people check the news. He's not expecting to find anything. He hasn't found anything. He said the checking isn't really about finding something. It's about proving to himself that the footage is there, that the record is continuous, that nothing took the night away while he was sleeping. That's Ryan's story. I think what makes it specifically unsettling is something that a lot of horror misses, which is that the most frightening things aren't the ones that announce themselves. They're the ones that are quiet and patient and methodical. Whatever was in that apartment on Carver Street wasn't breaking things or making noise or doing anything that forced a confrontation. It was just there, in the night, in the gaps, opening a door at 60 degrees and waiting. It didn't need Ryan to see it. It just needed to be in the same space. And based on the post, he found 6 months after he moved out, if there's any truth to it at all, it had been in that space for a long time before Ryan moved in. It'll be there long after the next tenant moves out too. Whatever is in the basement under that building on Carver Street. Whatever didn't leave when the building changed. It's patient. It's been patient for a long time.